news. Alison is talking about it in the newspapers. Papers there are marking the 2-year anniversary. Now, this is the start of the protest movement known as the Hirak, isn't it?
That's right, Stuart. Some people might remember that this protest movement was sparked by the announcement from the former president, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, that he was going to run for a 5th term. The protests have since continued and evolved into a larger movement calling for democratic change in Algeria. In just the past few days, Bouteflika's successor, Abdelmajid Tebboune, announced a cabinet reshuffle. He also issued pardons to protesters from the Hirak movement who had been jailed. Now, Algeria's government newspaper, which you're looking at here, El Mujahid, headlines that the protesters' demands have been achieved. The paper also uses the name that Tebboune has given to this anniversary, the 22nd of February. It's quite a mouthful. He calls it the National Day of Fraternity and Social Cohesion between the people and their army for democracy. The paper really emphasizes here that the army was successful, they say, in protecting protesters and making sure no blood was spilled. Again, we are looking at the government paper.
Yeah, that's the government newspaper, as you say, but other Algeria papers, they're saying that actually nothing's changed, aren't they?
Yeah, for the paper Liberté, this story is still en marche, on the move. Basically, this is not over yet. The paper reminds us that these protests never saw any violence, not a bit of broken glass or a rock thrown, the paper says. And in their front page editorial, the paper's editors write that the fact that the government has freed these protesters just proves their status as political prisoners who never should have been jailed in the first place. The protest movement has been repressed by the government, slowed down by the coronavirus pandemic, and more generally struggled to find a structure. The magazine Jeune Afrique is asking, can the Hirak reinvent itself? The magazine says that the movement isn't dead, but has simply gone dormant. According to this writer, the protest movement is really a prolongation of Algeria's fight for independence, and they wonder if the Algerian government is finally ready to listen. And the government is not, Stuart, if by the looks of this cartoon that we can take a look at by Hik for the paper El Watan, we see a protester there in a mask struggling to blow out the movement's birthday candles. The police officer standing by with a water cannon is asking, need any help?
He might destroy the cake if he used that. Let's move to the US for this next story. The country nearing yet another devastating coronavirus milestone. This is 500,000 deaths almost, isn't it?
That's right. Nearly 500,000 people in just over a year. It's a number that's really hard to fathom. And throughout the pandemic, we've really been seeing newspapers working hard to try and visualize the magnitude of some of these numbers. Yesterday, the New York Times had a pretty striking front page using dots to represent each of the individual deaths. Today's Washington Post, which you're looking at here, gives us a few other images. They say if the Vietnam War Memorial were to include 500,000 names, it would be 87 feet tall, which is over 26 meters. That's this shape that you see here for those who have not seen the Vietnam War Memorial. They say 500,000 people would also be enough to fill another cemetery the size of the famous Arlington Cemetery. And the image I found the most striking, which we don't see on the front page, is that it could also fill 500,000 people could fill a caravan of buses that would span all the way from New York City to Philadelphia.
Wow.
Now, this time, the landmark comes under a new president, not Donald Trump, but Joe Biden, of course. But for the Washington Post cartoonists and telenists, Donald Trump and his fellow Republicans really remain the ones to blame. In this cartoon, we see a Republican, I think perhaps it's supposed to be Mitch McConnell, holding up the flag at a golf hole marked 500,000. And you can see it's surrounded by spiky coronavirus-shaped golf balls.
Well, Donald Trump does, of course, continue to divide Republicans, and a new poll is actually showing just how much damage he could do if he decides to break off and form his own party.
That's right. This is a poll from USA Today that conducted it just last week, so these are recent numbers. It found that more than half of Republican voters, 54% of them, feel more loyal to Donald Trump as a person than they do to the Republican Party. And they also found as many as 46% of people said that they would abandon the GOP if Trump formed his own party, so he could easily kind of split it just about down the middle. USA Today writes that the overwhelming allegiance voters have to Trump give him the standing to really weigh in on future races. And it's also worth noting, as the paper notes, that he is going to be making his first major public address since leaving power next Sunday. So stay tuned to that.
We shall wait and see. Now, finally, from Alison, let's have a bit of an inspirational story. It's a Monday morning across Europe. I don't know where it is, where you are, but this is about the youngest woman ever to row across an ocean.
That's right, Stuart. She is 21 years old, which is
21.
21.
Okay.
Quite young.
Yeah.
Her name is Jasmine Harrison. You can see a picture of her on the front page of The Guardian today. She rowed across the Atlantic Ocean from the UK to Antigua in the Caribbean. It took her 70 days.
Wow.
What I find most inspiring is that she did it totally alone rather than with a crew of people, which I can't imagine myself doing at 21 years
No.
old. Much less,
24 hours
even
maybe,
now.
not 80 days or whatever it
And
was.
she said, I love the feeling you get from doing something by yourself. It's just so freeing to me. It's worth noting, though, that she did have some company. She said she saw whales and dolphins who followed her boat. She also had a lot of chocolate. She says she thinks she ate about 40 kilograms of chocolate. And I feel like, whales, chocolate, maybe I could do it. If I had that company.
If there's chocolate on offer, Alison Sargent will without Wales as well, obviously. Yeah, very nice. Well done to her. Fantastic story. Thank you very much.